Yes. So yesterday I forgot to give you this list of recent extinction, and this list has been given in the book, and we have to go by NCERT book for the board examination, as you know very well. There is a red list which is given by IUCN also, and that red list tells that there are 784 species have been lost. Out of that, 338 vertebrates, 200 359 invertebrates, and 87 are plants which are lost. Now, which I am writing on the board right now is the recent extinct which have taken place. Recent extincts, they include, the first name goes for dodo, Mauritius, then second is quagga, Quagg, quagga. The third name, this is in Africa. The first one, this is in Mauritius, Mauritius. Second one in quagga in Africa. The third name which has been given in the recent extinct is thylacine, Australia. The fourth name which is given in this is Steelers sea cow. Steelers sea cow, Russia. This is sea cow, Russia. The fifth name which is given is three subspecies of tiger. From Bali, Java, and Caspian. These are the recent extinct, and in the board examination, this can be asked. The record which is given in your NCERT book can be asked. After that, we did about the disappearance of this dinosaur. How did it disappear? And I told you that this is the sixth extinction which is taking place, and the different thing which is happening in this sixth extinction is that here the human activity is involved. Like in others, those were because of, mostly because of nature, natural activities. But this one, the recent extinction which is going on, it is the sixth extinction, and for this, human being is responsible. The human activities are responsible. Now we come to the next part, next topic, causes of diversity loss. So I'll erase it. So next comes causes of diversity loss. So it is causes of diversity loss. Causes of diversity loss. Why there is loss in, or causes of, it will be much better if you write it, biodiversity loss. So what can be the causes which were responsible for the loss of biodiversity? Why this loss of biodiversity took place in the nature? As you know, human activities are mostly responsible for this. The first point in this is habitat loss and fragmentation. The first point in it is habitat loss and fragmentation. Now, again, we come to some data here. See the tropical rainforests. Sometimes they were 14% of the Earth's land area. Tropical rainforest at one time, they were about 14% of the Earth's land surface. 14% of Earth's land surface. Now what has happened? Now what has happened? What change has taken place? Now they have shrunk to only 6% of the total Earth's land surface. So there is a shrinkage, there is a reduction in the tropical rainforest, and these tropical rainforests, they harbored many animals too. Of course, there was a loss of vegetation along with it, because this tropical rainforest harbored many animals. They also died, they also lost their habitat, and either they died or they migrated to other regions. Now there is another example which is given, is the Amazon rainforest. See, Amazon rainforest is, you know, second example. See, this covers such a huge area, and its participation in production of oxygen is so huge that we call it lungs of the planet, or lungs of earth, lungs of the earth. This is what we call. Any reduction in its size, any shrinkage in its region will cause is going to affect the environment a lot, because these are the lungs of the planet. Now here, this has uh, shrunk. This particular forest, Amazon rainforest, it was cut, and this cutting of rainforest, it was just to cultivate soya bean. It was to cultivate soya bean and grass, and to convert it into grassland, and to convert it into grassland. Why this conversion took place? This was used to cultivate. The forests were cut to cultivate soya bean and was converted into grassland. And why this? This was just for raising beef cattle. This was done just to raise beef cattle. Just to raise beef cattle. That means the human being did it for their greed. Okay, for their well-being, for their welfare, they did it. But ultimately, what got affected? The environment got affected. The ecosystem got affected because of continuous cutting down of Amazon rainforest, which has shrunk to a big area. Now, here what happens? Another thing, various human activities are like, if a road is made in between a national park. Road is made where? In between a national park. Suppose this is a national park, and here in between, if you make the road, what is going to happen? What is going to happen? How it is going to affect the environment? See, these big animals like the tigers, the lions, they have their territory in kilometers. Territory of these big animals is in kilometers. Besides this, territory of migratory birds is also in kilometers. Migratory birds, the birds which come from all over the world, they migrate. Their territory is also in kilometers, is also very large. And if by human activities their territory is disturbed, of course their survival gets affected. If their territory is disturbed, their survival gets affected. See, a lion, a tiger has a territory in kilometers. The government is making rules, then what is going to happen? Of course their territory is affected. They will not get that space which they want naturally, and that is going to affect their survival. Same way, migratory birds which are coming from other countries, if they don't get that space, then what is going to happen? They will not migrate, and ultimately it is going to survive, to affect their survival. Same way, sometimes what happens, the territories overlap. There is overlapping of territories. because of less space. Overlapping of territories. What is this overlapping of territories? That means sharing of territories. Suppose there is a sharing of territory or overlapping of territory between two lands, then what happens? You know, they are so particular about their territory. If any other animal, especially male, I'm talking about, I'm not talking about lioness, I'm talking about lion. So if there is overlapping of territory, and that overlapping is between two lions, then what is going to happen? There is fight for the territory, and sometimes what happens, not sometimes, most of the times one of the two is killed. That means again the ecosystem is getting harmed, because already we are having less number of lions, and because of this overlapping of territories, because of human interference, what is happening? We are losing more such animals who are at the verge of extinction. So this is what going to happen, and this is what we call as habitat loss. Habitat loss is because of the cutting down of the forests. See the tropical rainforest, one example I gave. And then see, of course, see here I told you that in tropical rainforest, 14 at one time 14% of the earth's land surface was covered by tropical rainforest. Later on, what happened? It has shrunk to just 6%. That means the animals, the birds who were dependent, the small animals, the mollusks, um, the worms, the insects who were dependent on them also lost their habitat. So either they will not survive, or and you know, every organism is used to of a particular environment, and when the organism is displaced, it is hard for the organism to survive. So most of them, they are not able to survive. Then you know, sometimes what happens, the people blame that there are you know, the leopards attacking the people in the village, the leopards attacking people in the village. You think in that case the human is at fault or the leopard is at fault? It is not the leopard who's at fault. It is we human beings who are at fault, because what we have done, that we have encroached their territory. We have gone into the territory of a leopard, and that is why it is, see, the leopard is not wrong, it is in its territory only. It is we the one who have gone into the territory of the leopard. And then what happens? Whatever prey, whatever easy prey the leopard finds, it kills. And then we say that the leopard has killed so many human beings in that particular area, or so many domestic animals in that particular area. And you know, these animals, these big cats, they have as I told you, they have territory in kilometers, big territory. So this was the first point which I wanted to discuss, is habitat loss and fragmentation. So here one example of fragmentation I have told you. And the first two examples, that was because that was example of habitat loss. Habitat loss is because of the shrinking of the area where the organisms live, and because of shrinking of those areas, they lose their habitat, and their survival is difficult. We come to the second point, which is over exploitation. So we are discussing the causes of biodiversity loss. So the second point here is over exploitation. Over exploitation of what? Over exploitation of natural resources. The resources which are provided to us for free by the nature. The resources which are provided to us for free by the nature. So second is over exploitation of natural resources. Of course, over exploitation of natural resources. See, it is said that nature has sufficient enough to fulfill our needs, but when this need turns into greed, then the nature has nothing. Then the disaster comes. Then comes the disaster. So till the time the human being fulfills its needs, it's okay. Nature has sufficient to give. But once that need turns into greed, then the disasters come. And you know, the floods. the floods, the drought. This is all because of over exploitation. Why are we facing floods these days? Why are we facing excessive drought conditions these days? That excessive heat, the temperature rises to a very high degree during summers. Why are we facing these things? This is just because of over exploitation of our natural resources. See, the people are cutting forests. They are cutting forests to make industries, to make buildings, to make colonies, and there they live. But what happens to the forest? See, the forests are cut down. There are no trees to fix CO2. There are no trees which can bring sufficient rain. And then the heat, the temperature of the earth increases. And finally, what happens? The glaciers melt. Then there is excessive flood. During summers, what happens? Drought conditions. Okay, so this is just because of over exploitation is when the need turns into greed. Need turns into greed. So when the need turns into greed, then what happens? There is disaster which is caused by nature. Now children, there are some many species extinct in the last 500 years. With the list which I have just given you when I started the lecture, it was about the list, the recent extinction that was just because of over exploitation. Either these animals were directly affected or indirectly affected. Directly affected, that means poaching, of course. See, that is also, see, the people, they kill elephant for the ivory. So that is also greed. Okay, killing the animals for ivory, for various things, for their um, uh, just to get for their amusement. They are what they are doing. They are going for hunting and all. So this is something which is going to harm the nature. And finally, there is ecological disbalance and the disaster. So we should not let our need turn into greed. If we want a balance in our ecosystem, if we want that the human race should survive for a long time. The third cause of biodiversity loss is alien species invasion. Alien species. Alien species invasion means a new species which is introduced into a certain environment. Then what happens? Either it harms the original species, or the original species, they die because the competition increases. And because of that, the original species, the local species of that particular area gets affected. Now here, the examples which are here is, the best example is of carrot grass and water hyacinth. The carrot grass or parthenium, you all must have heard of carrot grass. It's a weed, parthenium. And the second example is ecornia. I think we have done it before. Ecornia, we have done it before or not? Which chapter have we done it? Water hyacinth. Yes, which chapter have we done it? Anybody remembers? Ecornia? Yes, first chapter. That's right. What is it known as? What is it? Yes, Amit Patosh. What is it known as? It had been given a name. It had been given a name. Anybody remembers? Terror of Bengal, Suksahaj. That's right. It was named as Terror of Bengal. Yes, 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 Paras. It's right. Terror of Bengal. Now, why was it called Terror of Bengal? Because it was a new species which was introduced in our environment. Okay, now what happened when it was why was it introduced? Because of its beautiful leaves, beautifully arranged leaves, so it was introduced. But later on, what happened? It spread at a very high rate. decrease the natural vegetation of that water body. So this is how sometimes alien species is. This came into India with the imported cereals, the grains which were imported from other countries. Along with that, the seeds of the carrot grass came to India, and this is also a weed, and of course, this also affected our the original vegetation which was growing in our country. Now, that means invasion of this and this, both invasion of both the alien species, the new species, they affected the original species of that particular area. So this is one of the reason for the cause of biodiversity loss. Another example which is there is Nile perch. The Nile perch, it is a fish. The name is Nile perch. This Nile perch was introduced in Lake Victoria in Africa. This was introduced in Lake Victoria in East Africa, and when it was introduced here, it was the cause because it was an invasive, it was a foreign alien species which introduced which was introduced in Lake Victoria. So Lake Victoria has its own species also, own fishes also. So this was the cause of death of 200 species of cichlid fishes. So 200 species of fishes in the lake died, got extinct, got extinct. So this was because got extinct, they died. So 200 species of the original species which were living in that, they got extinct just because of this invasive alien species which was introduced in the Lake Victoria. This is another example. Then one more example is there that there is African catfish. You know what are catfishes? Catfishes are the fishes with barbels. You know, this is the snout. Sometimes the fishes have such mustaches like the barbels they have. These fishes which have barbels on their snout, these are barbels. The fishes which have barbels, they are known as catfishes. There is a African catfish which was introduced in India, and the name was Clarius garipinus. Clarius garipinus. Clarius. This fish, this catfish, when it was introduced, it was cause of the death of many indigenous catfishes which were already there, which was already there. They got extinct or they decreased, their number decreased. So sometimes the cause of biodiversity is invasion of the alien species when the alien species are introduced in an environment. Then co-extinction. The last point of cause of biodiversity loss is now here. Now here, suppose what happens that in a particular area, say in a water body, if any fish in a water body, suppose this is a water body and fish dies. If the fish dies, then whosoever is dependent on, they will die by itself. That means that the parasites which are feeding water is left by this. Okay, whosoever, all the organisms which are dependent on it, they all will die. This is co-extinction. Now, while I think you were taught that chapter about pollination, in that chapter you must have done that the fig, it gives shelter to wasps. You have done this? Fig gives shelter, fig plant, in the fig flower, the wasp is given shelter. Why it is given shelter? You have done this? We have done this before. If you remember why this is given shelter, in the fig flower, yes, to lay eggs. Yes, the fig flower, it gives it shelter to lay eggs. Okay, yes, it lays eggs there. In turn, the wasp also helps the fish and the fig. How does it help the fig plant? In turn, wasp also helps the fig plant. How does it help the fig plant? It helps the fig plant by pollinating, by transferring the pollens. So by pollinating, it helps the fig flower. Now that means both are existing together. So if one will die, another will die on its own. If there is a tree, on this tree many birds live. Okay. And on the birds, on the body of the birds, many insects, small insects are living. If this tree is cut, what is going to happen? All the birds which are dependent on it, all the parasites which are dependent on the bird, they will also die together. So this is another factor which is co-extinction, in which if one dies, if the host dies, then whosoever living organisms are dependent on it for its survival, they also die. So here, this is co-extinction. So these are the four causes of biodiversity loss. The first of which was habitat loss, fragmentation. Second was overexploitation. Third was alien species invasion. And the fourth was co-extinction. Out of these four, anything you want me to repeat and you are not able to understand, you can just ask me. Yes, anything which you could not understand, because the time is almost over and I don't want to start the next topic. Yes, beta, anything out of it which you could not understand? Yes, bache, I'm not getting your response. No response from nobody. Any questions? Anything you want me to repeat? Yes, beta. Alien species and co-extinction are interlinked. Last two examples. Last two examples, that means about the tree after Econia. After Econia. Can you just remind me which were those examples? That was after Econia, I gave the example of Clarius, a catfish. Is that Amit Katoj? Nile perch. Paras Singh is saying Nile perch. Nile perch is a fish, beta, which is introduced in Lake Victoria. You know, in East Africa, there is a lake. East Africa, there is a very popular lake. The lake is Lake Victoria. Already in this Lake Victoria, there were many species of cichlid fishes, CICHLID fishes. Already, many species of these fishes were there. Already, they were living here in this lake. Now, what happened? A new fish, which was Nile perch, was introduced. They were already living here. A new fish, Nile perch, was introduced in this lake. It was introduced in the lake. Now, the competition increased. The competition increased. There were, fights for the territory, for food. I mean, for the shelter, for food, for everything. The competition increased. Maybe the Nile perch is more stronger than cichlid fishes. It may happen that the Nile perch is more stronger than cichlid fishes. As you all know, that survival of the fittest. So what happened? Because of introduction of this, because of these reasons, because of increase in competition for food, for shelter, for the territory, what happened? About 200 species of this, 200 species of this, which were already living in this area, in this lake, they got extinct. They got extinct. And this survived. This is the first example. Is it clear, beta? This example is clear about Lake Victoria. Is it clear, bache? Okay. The second example, which Amit Katoch asked, I think that was about the catfish. Am I right? Catfish you want to ask? Yes, beta? Yes, bache? Okay. Catfish. I told you what is a catfish basically. I'll rub it first. Catfish. What is a catfish? You know what is catfish? Catfish are the fishes with barbels, which have barbels. You must have seen some fishes, they have long thread-like structures on their snout. You know what is snout? Snout is if this is fish, if this is fish, this portion is snout. So some of them, they have, just these thread-like structures on their snout here, the mustache-like structures. These are known as barbels. These structures are known as barbels. And because of the presence of the barbels, these fishes are known as catfishes. These fishes are known as catfishes. We have a number of catfishes in our country, in the rivers. And what is the importance of these catfishes is they can live in less oxygen condition also. If you take them out from water for sometimes, they are alive for some time. They can live in the scarcity of water. Some fishes are found in mud also. Those fishes are catfishes. So we have a number of catfishes are indigenous species. Indigenous species means the species which are found in our own country, in the rivers. We already have a number of catfishes. Now, a new catfish was introduced in our country, a new African catfish. African catfish. And the name of that African catfish is Clarius. Clarius is the genus and the species is Gary Pinus. Gary Pinus. This new African catfish was also introduced in the river.